Hi everyone, I am Martina Cunha and you're listening to Backstage Talk. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Backstage Talk. Today is a really special episode because it is our 100th episode. And
What?
I am really excited for this guest that I have today. I have Eli Tokash. He is one of the sweetest and most wonderful human beings I have ever met. He is a performer. He has been in 5 Broadway and touring shows like Finding Neverland, Pippin, A Christmas Story, and Mary Poppins. He was the first ever Trevor from Trevor the Musical, who you won an award for that role, right?
I did,
Um,
yeah.
and he also is the host and producer of one of my favorite podcasts, Take a Bow, also available on the Broadway Podcast Network. So, Eli, I am really happy and excited to have you here. Welcome to Backstage Talk.
Oh my gosh, I'm so honored to be here. I've always said like there's a few podcasts on BPN that I've like always been wanting to go on, and yours is like the first one on my list. So I'm honored to be here. Honored to be here with you today and catch up with you. It's gonna be so much fun.
Yes, it will. And trust me, the honor and the pleasure is mine, because
Stop.
I admire you so much. And um, besides being friends, I professionally admire you so much. So thank you for being here.
Yes, of course. I mean, I'm a big fan of yours as well. You're on my podcast already, so I'm excited to be here today.
So, Eli, what did I miss from your bio? Because you started really young in this industry and you're now in college. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and a random fun fact about you.
Oh, a random fun fact about me is I'm probably the least cultured like theater kid in the world. Like I haven't even seen most of the Disney movies. I've probably seen like 3 Disney movies. When I tell people that I've seen The Lion King, they yell at me, my friends, because I've only seen like the live action and I've never seen like the cartoon. Same with Beauty and the Beast, all of these like movies that they're like now remaking in live action. So everyone gets mad at me for that, and I'd probably say that I'm definitely not cultured in my Disney era, and I have failed theater kids for sure.
So, how did you start in this industry?
Yeah, so I started out. I'm originally from like West Virginia, which is like 30 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. And everything that we did was in Pittsburgh. At the time, my brother and I played ice hockey, and so we practically lived in Pittsburgh when we were going to practices and whether grocery shopping, eating, all that stuff would take place in Pittsburgh while they like waited for us at practice and whatnot. So we practically lived in Pittsburgh, and one day we saw an ad in the newspaper that Pittsburgh's maybe I would say one of the most like famous theater companies in Pittsburgh and like theaters in Pittsburgh, which is the Benedum Center, and a lot of shows that go through the Benedum Center are put on through the Pittsburgh CLO, Civic Light Opera. And my in the newspaper one day, my sister saw an ad that she could audition for a show, and they were doing like these open calls and all these things, and we had no idea what any of this stuff meant. My sister and I would love to, and my brother, we would love to like do like SNL skits and like put on shows and stuff around our house. But it was nothing like crazy, like we weren't putting on like full like little productions or anything. We would just be singing around the house, being fools, and menaces for my parents. So when she saw the ad, she totally was like, "Oh my god, I need to audition. I need to audition." My parents were like, "There's no way, like what even is that, like I don't think so," and all these things. She did dance, she did soccer, she did track, like she was doing her own thing. And they were just like, "We don't have time for this, blah blah blah." Well, she just kept asking and asking, and then the day of the auditions, my parents woke her up at like 7 a.m. and we're like, "Okay, get ready, we're gonna go to your audition." And she was like, "What?" So excited. And I love telling this story. This is a little long-winded answer to your question, but So we went, or she went, and she pulled up in like a full out camo outfit, and everyone else had like rehearsal blacks, and everyone was in their like jazz shoes, and we put her in her tennis shoes, or sneakers or whatever. And you know come to find out a couple days later, she booked it. And she booked it with a bunch of really talented people who are still like killing it in the industry. It was the tour of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Because in every like little new city, they would hire local orphans so that they didn't have to like pay for them to travel all around. Um, and it was her, like Joe Serafini, who's like killing it in the High School Musical, the musical, the series.
Yes.
Logan Roland, who was in the Adams Family tour, and like all of these fantastic people, like kids who have kind of went on to do like their own stuff, which has been fantastic. And so we asked around to them, like they were in the academy, they were doing stuff in Pittsburgh and doing the theater thing, and they were like big deals in Pittsburgh. So the fact that they were like in this show was like, oh, cool. They were like the cool kids in town. So we asked them, and we asked their parents, like, what's the deal, like, how does this all work, like my sister really enjoys it, blah blah blah. And they were helping us out, so they got my sister enrolled. Well, then come to find out, like opening night, I went to see the show, and I was like, oh my god, this is like, it was my first introduction to musicals. Again, probably because I've never seen a Disney movie. This was my first introduction at like 6 or 7 to like a real like musical.
Right.
And I was just absolutely blown away, and I didn't even understand what was fully going on, but I was like, that's something that I would like. I want to be up there. So then my mom was like, okay, then we really have to like figure this out. So, just calling around, asking around, eventually doing a summer camp at the academy, my whole family. So the fam enrolled us into the summer camps in Yellow, and that's where I did my first ever show. Not even like I mean, not even like a school production. I didn't even do any of those. But I mean, I was in my choir at school. But anyways, it was my first show. I was King Louis in the Jungle Book Junior. Not a big deal. Bare Necessities was my jam when I was a kid. And just absolutely like being a fool on stage and making people laugh. Just it sealed the deal for me, and I was just like, how can I do this more and more? Like, what's next? Let me do it. So like at the summer camp, the principal of the like whole thing was like, you really should audition for like our like shows, like our real shows at the Benedum and the Byam and all the things. So every year they like do a Christmas Carol um at the Byam Theater, and I auditioned and I got it, and it was an unbelievable experience. Like that was like my first real show that like I got my paycheck and like a real cast with adults and all these things, and that was at 6 years old. So, very, very crazy journey to the whole scene, but eventually happened, and I was in that A Christmas Carol as Tiny Tim for 3 straight years, and in my third year, yeah, you know, th- every year it was just like, okay, you should like do some other shows. So I did like
Mhm.
Oliver and Jesus Christ Superstar and like all these things with them. And they were just like, you need to like just go to New York for a weekend and see what happens. And when I was in A Christmas Carol, there were people who would come see the show and be like, oh, like we want to represent you. And
Mhm.
so, like I got like a local agent, but then the New York agents we were like skeptical about because we were like, New York's so far away, we don't want to move. Um, and one thing led to another, and so they were just like, go. And so we stayed with the musical director of A Christmas Carol, and he wrote down like a bunch of agencies that like are good for like starting out in the industry and all these things. And this was on like December 23rd, so it was like close to the Christmas holiday. and it was, cold in New York, windy, all the things, snowing, and we got up here. We were let off in Chinatown. It was our first experience in New York, and we were like, "What do we do?" um, and we were just like going crazy, and like we would ask around, but like no one would speak English in Chinatown, and we were just like, "Oh no, like what have we gotten ourselves into?" And so we pretty much walked from Chinatown to like 70th Street, where my musical director's apartment was, and finally got home, and we showered to like warm up, and then we went out on our way again to slide, because I had done like a short film, and then like I had the CLO credits and whatnot on my resume. So like I had like a little resume, and I had a short film, and so we were just sliding it under their doors, because we would knock and no one would answer, because
Yeah.
it was like the holiday, so they were like out. And so we were like, okay, well, this is great. We'll just leave it under the door, and they'll see it when they see it, type thing. So there was one agency, the Clear Talent Group, which is a pretty popular agency for sure. They were open, and they were like, "Oh, come in," after we knocked, and we were like, "Oh, great." And they were like, "Who are you here to see?" And we were like, I'm sorry. What does that mean? Because we were like, we don't have an appointment, like we were just coming to like chat. And they were like, oh no, like that's not how that works, like you have to come and you have to have an appointment, you have to call ahead and we have to approve you and all the things. And we were like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry for wasting your time. Like, here's this handed them my resume and short film. Here's my stuff. Um, you know, oh,
Call me if
yeah,
something
call me.
happens.
Exactly. And so, we walked out the door. We didn't even get like out of the building pretty much, and they were just like, "Come back up really quick. We want to like talk to you."
Mhm.
And we were like, "Oh, okay, great." So obviously, like it was slow and everything at the holiday time, so apparently they had time. And Paula Pueto was my first ever agent. She took me back and talked to me and was like, interviewing me almost and asking me to sing and do like a monologue and do whatever. And they were like, okay, great, like have a good day. And I was like, oh, this is so weird. Like, how does this industry work? Um, like, why wouldn't you tell me like there, And they're like, "Okay, thank you so much." Like, not even like a "we'll be in touch" or whatever. And so I was like, "Okay, great." Like, at least I saw someone. Successful trip, So we then go downstairs again, and we go around the corner to the Familia Pizzeria, the famous pizza in New York. And
Yeah.
so we were eating, and I was on the phone with my mom actually, because I was like, "Mom, someone saw me," and I was just like so excited because it was me and my dad and my brother, and she was like, "You have to come back up. I watched your short film, and I want to sign you." And I was like, "There's no way you watched my short film because it has not been 8 to 12 minutes, like however long it was." But, okay. And they signed me and I was like, "This is wonderful. Like, how does this whole thing work?" And she was like, "You know what? Just like trust us. Like, we'll guide you through it and all the things." Like, they were so sweet about it all. And, they were like, "This is gonna be great." So I go home and I was like, "Oh, I have an agent," So like we stopped going to other agents and we were like, "This is it." And we went home back to West Virginia, and probably like the day after like New Year's, like as soon as they could, they sent me out on an audition. And so they my first ever audition was for Mary Poppins, like professionally, like
Yeah.
outside of Pittsburgh, and I booked it. So I was like, this industry is great, one for one. I'm so
Yeah.
good. Little did I know that that's not the case. But yeah, that's how that whole story started. Sorry it took so long to tell, but
No, I loved it because that was the most unexpected jump to Broadway, so I love
yeah,
it.
yeah. No, seriously, it was like it totally like I mean, not for a lack of a better term, like, it was a fluke, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it just, like, didn't it's not your traditional story. It wasn't something that was planned. It wasn't even, like, a goal of mine at the time, you know? Like, it was just something,
Mhm.
that was in my life, and I just knew I wanted to perform. Like, I didn't even know what Broadway was, you know? Like, I was just like, "Oh, it's theater in New York," you know, like, type thing. And I was like, "Cool, we have that too." Like, our Broadway is the CLO, you know?
I love it. So, starting with Mary Poppins, you then went to other shows as Pippin, Finding Neverland, and leading all the way to Trevor 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, how how was it going on tour and being on Broadway with those shows?
Yeah. So, I went on tour with Mary Poppins. I was 9 years old, and it was just an unbelievable experience. You know, it was weird and it's unique for a kid to go on tour because with all the child labor laws and everything, you know, you can only perform so many times a week. You can only like travel so much, and you have to do school and all these things. Like it's very like crazy that like even I still to this day like don't fully understand. um, but it was great, you know, and the cities that I didn't have to do school in were my favorites, you know, because like I couldn't explore the cities. Like I couldn't do that stuff that like the adults would do or whatever. Like our field trips, we would go on school field trips would be at like the aquarium or the national park, you know? Like that was my extent of like St. Louis and Minnesota. Oh wait, I think St. Louis and oh no, St. Louis, Minnesota. We did go to the Mall of America. That was fun. And like all of these like beautiful cities, Seattle, and like all of these great cities where you could do so much, but like that was my extent of exploring the city. And then of course like we had like our boring cities like Ohio and all of that, and we didn't mind that, but you know, it was good. Like yeah, so but I loved it, and it was my first time away from my family, so it was really challenging. um a lot, especially in the beginning, you know, like it was easy to get homesick. And then it was especially towards the end where it was just like this is so weird. Like I'm
Mhm.
just ready. But then I was go to the theater and I'd be like with my family, but like not my actual family. So it was just like a weird range of emotions that like me as a 9 year old, I just didn't understand and didn't know how to deal with or comprehend. Um, but I loved touring, and I've always said that I wanted to do a tour like now, like after college, be able to explore the world a little bit because it's a great excuse to do that and enjoy the tour, you know,
Yeah,
enjoy performing, be able to go out, do get like actual rest instead of like doing a show and then waking up at like 7 to do school and tutoring and stuff. So yeah, that would be my thing, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
I love it. What would be one of your favorite memories from those Broadway shows?
Oh my god. Those Broadway shows, I mean, with A Christmas Story, Pippin, and Finding Neverland, they were all so different, you know? They were all, uh I really lucked out because I not every show has that sense of family that you have, but I feel like any show with kids, that sense of family really comes out because you become a family. You know, like you're playing. The adults are playing parents, the kids are playing
Mhm.
their kids, and like it just happens. And everyone kind of around you, like the kids just keep everyone young, you know, like I've had them all on my podcast, and it's just like anything with kids just immediately brings the inner kids and the adults, and everyone becomes more of a family and like all the things. So just the sense of like the friendships that I've made definitely stands out. I wish I could say like my Broadway debut, but like I really don't remember it, which is so sad. And probably just like the freedom the freedom that my creative teams and especially like in Pippin and Finding Neverland, you know, Diane Paulus really uh allowed me to take the reins on my role, and I replaced both times in Pippin and Finding Neverland, so it wasn't like my role to come into and make, but it was when I was there, it really felt like that was the case. and she allowed me to just play and allowed me to have fun with it, make it my own. So that's definitely probably my favorite part about it.
That's incredible. How would you summarize this whole journey as a performer all the way to today with your podcast, with being in college, training a lot, trying to find new opportunities to work in this industry?
A whirlwind, is how I would pretty much sum it up as, because, there were so many things that happened off stage, that have led to all of these moments. Like my dad and I came here and we didn't like own an apartment, so I had to like forge a lease saying that I owned an apartment to be able to go to school in New York. Like we had to do all of these things. My family is so much of like a we'll figure it out mentality, and like we'll do whatever it takes to do it, and like we'll outwork whoever we need to, in order to succeed and to live. And that's kind of been the mentality for it all, but also staying true to like my roots, back home and my family and all of that. So it's been a whirlwind, just trying to figure out life, like moving from West Virginia, New York was not easy. It was a culture shock for sure. Like, I mean, craziness stock here, but like, there was like, the first introduction I had to like gay people was like on tour, like when I was 9 years old. And like, that's like crazy. Like, that's just like, I don't understand how that's even possible. But like, I look back on that and it blows me away. And then like the diversity and the cultures here in New York, like, there's none of that. There's like Italians and Polacks in West Virginia. And so like there it's just another world. And so to live here and learn all of this new stuff both on and off stage, has led to so much growth in me as a human. And also just a lot of self realizations happened along the way. And it just let's just say New York made it all make sense. And here I am today and performing, and I'm very lucky to be able to do what I love.
Yes, and I absolutely love it. Let's swift it a little
Yeah.
bit onto your podcast show. So,
Sure.
how, why, and when did you start this?
So I why was okay, was a bit of the when too. So it was we it started out as a co-hosted podcast. So there were two hosts. It was me and Sydney Lucas, who was in Fun Home, and she and I always wanted to do something together. I worked with her brother in A Christmas Story, but some way, somehow, it was like she totally like her and I's friendship took off, and like her brother and I's friendship wasn't as like sharp,
Yeah,
It's so funny. I've always gotten along better with girls. Don't know why. Seriously. So we always wanted to do something. We always wanted to like create something with each other, and have a little passion project or something. So, I had this idea of making this podcast because I was obsessed with podcasts. Well, I am obsessed with podcasts. And, I called her and I was just like, I'm doing a podcast. Like, I'm starting my own podcast. Like, I'm so excited. And she was like, what? Like, what is this? Like, what does this mean? Like, how does this work? And I was like, oh, I don't know, but like, this is like what I'm gonna do, and like I'm gonna figure it out.
yeah,
And because like, do we still know what we're doing? I don't know. And it was just so fun, and we were both so excited about it. And she was like, if you ever want like a co-host, like let me know, type of thing, like as a joke. And I was like, wait, yes.
absolutely. Yes.
Yes, yeah, like, stop. You will absolutely be co-hosting. So this became like our little project that we always dreamed about. And it started just before we had the idea and formulated the idea in like January, February of 2020. Little did we know that Broadway would be shut down
Yeah.
in March of 2020. But in a way, it was like the best thing that kind of happened for us. We were making this theater podcast. in a time where there was no theater.
Yeah,
So
same happened to backstage talk. So we're on the same boat.
yeah, but I think it was just so magical, like we were
Yes.
able to bring a piece of theater to people at a time where they didn't have any.
Yes.
Um, and I think that, podcasts in general are just so popular at the time and all the things. So it just was like a perfect storm of like creating this project, like we had no idea. And you know, uh, uh, I guess for some of us, like for Sydney and I, we never talked about like how long we would do it. Like if you told me in 2020 that I'd still be doing a podcast in 2023, I would have been like, "You're nuts."
Yeah.
But that's just the way it worked out. And Sydney was just like, once everything kind of came back to normal and she was working again, um, she was like, "Okay, I gotta pull back from it, and I'll obviously like support it all still, and let me know if you need anything, and co-host every once in a while or whatever." But it was so sweet and all the things. And now it's kind of just hosted by me, and I've taken over for the past like 100 or so episodes. I do it every week. It's a grind, but it's a passion of mine, and I love it. And it's all about theater, and it's all about, we go to the theater and we see these wonderful, wonderful performers take like perform, but we don't get to like see them.
Yeah.
We see them as a character and all the things. And so the goal of my podcast was really to allow them, the performer, each individual performer, take a bow as themselves, like take off the costumes, take off the wigs, be your natural self, tell your story, take ownership of your accomplishments and everything that you've done to get to the top and where you are today, you know and I try to honor that in the best way that I can in all of my episodes. So that's kind of what Take a Bow is, and how it all started and when it started.
I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite shows. I really enjoy those conversations. It was an honor when you invited me. So it's just amazing. It's an
Yes.
amazing, amazing podcast.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot coming from you.
What advice would you give to someone that wants to get into this industry, having your whole baggage starting as a kid all the way to today?
um am I allowed to curse on this podcast?
Yes, why
Okay.
not?
Great. I'm just making sure. Someone very wise once told me, if you throw enough shit against the wall, something will stick.
Yeah.
And I've kind of like, ever since that, it was someone on Mary Poppins that told that to me, and ever since that moment, like it kind of has been my motto through it all, because it doesn't happen that like your first audition you're gonna book. And so when I had that experience, it was like a rude awakening that
Yeah.
that's just not how it works. And I since then I've probably gotten 77 no's to the one yeses, like type thing. So you know it's so cliche, but it's just like keep going, never give up on your dreams, like type thing. But like I mean that in the most sincere way, like you're told no so much, and it's so easy to get discouraged in this industry. I still to this day am and get discouraged from like, oh my God, I'm never gonna work again. Like this is gonna be terrible.
Yeah.
But there's something out there for you, and there's a story for you to tell. You have a story powerful enough to tell, that you deserve to be on the stage, even if it is a regional theater, a tour, or the biggest stage that we have made as a society called Broadway. Like I have this stigma for Broadway, but that's another conversation. And yeah, so like just continuing to push on, and if this is something that you're passionate about, then you have to like be passionate about it, because it's not something that you can half-ass. It's not something that you can quit like day two, like that's
Yeah.
just if you want to do it, you have to do it, and you have to go all in. um you have a question coming up that I'll kind of tie back to what I'm saying now, but there's no way. Dan Loria, who was my older self in A Christmas Story, who was in the Wonder Years as a child actor, and Lombardi and all these things he's done. Um, he said, "You can't half-ass this industry. Like, you can't." At the time, in A Christmas Story and Mary Poppins and everything, I would be traveling back to West Virginia and wherever I needed to be. Um, and he was like, "You can't. Like, I don't know how much I can tell you this, but you cannot succeed in this industry doing that. Like, you're gonna drive yourself crazy. You're
Mhm.
gonna drive yourself out of the industry." And you know, that I'll leave the rest for a question that's coming up. So yeah,
So, what is a risk
yeah.
that you've taken that has totally paid off? And now we'll tie back to what you just
Oh
said.
yeah. So the best risk that I take, and I can't just like take full responsibility for this because it was so much my parents. I mean, for any child actor, it goes back to your parents. But moving to New York, like that was it was hard because at the time it wasn't a risk because my parents said you're not moving to New York until you have a role.
Mhm,
And so when I booked Pippin, um they were like, "Okay, I guess we're, like, fully moving." Because like, in A Christmas Story and stuff, like, we were living in hotels, we were living in a subletting apartments for weeks or whatever. So, like, we didn't do it. So then he told us that, and we were like, "Okay, well, if the opportunity presents itself again, well, that just means that's life putting us where we need to be." We always said that. And so Pippin happened, we moved for 6 months though. Like, that was a very strong thing in my house. It's only 6 months. That's how long the contracts are. Um, but then I extended, and then I kept working, and I was doing like 3 jobs at once while in Pippin. And then Pippin ended, and I was doing The Greatest Showman readings, and I was doing all like a commercial, and I was doing a TV show forever,
mhm,
and all these things. And they were like, "God, like, just like, what are we doing? Like, we have to figure this out. He's still like doing stuff up here." And then Finding Neverland came into my life. Diane called and was like, "I think you're perfect for Neverland." When Pippin closed, and she was like, "We have an opening up soon. Love for you to audition," and all these things. And so it's you c- it all made sense when we made the move, but you cannot succeed in this industry unless you're in it, in the center of it. You have to be in New York, you have to be in California, you have to be where the magic is. And still to this day, like, if I didn't live in New York, I don't think my podcast would be as successful as it is today, because while I'm here in New York, I'm still continuing, even though I'm not doing a show or anything. I'm auditioning, and I'm still making my connections, and I'm still um, able to do these wonderful events that just like pop up here and there, and I'm able to do the opening nights and all these things that uh, I wouldn't have the luxury of doing if I didn't live in New York.
mhm.
And the best thing that I ever did was move to New York, as I in this industry. So I would say that's the best risk.
I love that. Last question. What are your top five favorite musical theater shows?
Oh my god. Top 5. I've always said, okay, Waitress is there, probably number 1. But I've always said, unpopular opinion, Sideshow is one of my favorite musicals. Absolutely love Sideshow. Waitress. I love MJ right now. I love I love everything right now. I love Some Like It Hot, Kimberly Akimbo. But I'm trying to think, like, all time. Um, yeah, I would say Waitress, Sideshow. I'm a sucker for Finding Neverland. I know I was in it, and I know I was biased, but I'll never forget the first time I ever saw that show. It was like the first show that actually made me weep like a little child. And those top 3, and then I don't know. This is so hard, Martine. You can't do this to me. There's so many wonderful shows that I would like put them all in the category, because there's literally not one show that I've like walked out of, like, or like not liked. I don't know. I don't know. Probably one of the ones that I mentioned. I know they're recent, but that's just what's on my mind.
No, but I love that. Eli, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey. Um, Everyone, if you're listening to this, go listen to Take a Bow. It has the most incredible interviews with Broadway people out there. And I'm really happy to have you over. So happy 100th episode.
Happy 100th episode, Martine. I'm so honored that I get to be your 100th guest. That's so exciting. I can't believe 100 episodes. That's such a congratulations to you. That's such an amazing thing for you, and says how much shows how much Backstage Talk is killing it, and what you do over here, the conversations that you have are so incredible, and everything that this podcast stands by with uh doing it in Spanish and having conversations in English. Like, it's so wonderful what you're doing, and there's nothing else out there like it. You've made history already. You're just doing so much. I'm so proud of everything that you're doing, and it's an honor to be on here today, being a part of your journey with this.
Thanks everyone for listening to this new episode of Backstage Talk. Remember to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Backstage Talk Podcast.